This tutorial will show you how to use GoFigure's database features so that you can save segmentation results and look at them at future times. For the remainder of this tutorial, I'll assume that you already have MySQL installed, but if you don't already have that installed, you can go to this web page. Here's the URL, so I'll give you a second to copy that down. And you'll see on this page that there are installation instructions for MySQL, right now for Windows 32 bits and 64 bits, but by the time you're looking at this, probably there are instructions for Mac and Linux as well. So once you have that installed, you are ready to initialize your database for use with GoFigure. And in order to do that, you can go to Settings, Database, Setup Database, and this menu option will be there the first time you're doing this, but once you've done this once, you won't have to do this again. So make sure you're happy with the username and password and future settings you choose while doing this wizard. So I will choose a username here of username, and then click Next. And here you're prompted to enter the root password. And this is the password that you picked when you were installing MySQL. And this is another password that it's important not to forget. And also be sure to remember this username and password that you chose over here, because you'll be prompted to enter this each time you use the database with GoFigure. So I'll go ahead and click OK. And in this case, we already have created this user, but for you it will say something slightly different, but you can also go ahead and click OK. And here I'm prompted to enter the authors for different GoFigure projects in your lab. So I'll enter one author name. So if my name is Barack Obama, I can enter that and create an author. And here you can also create a second author if you want. But of course you'll have to enter a different first and last name. So first, middle, last might be another author, and you can click Create Author. And once you've entered all the authors you want to enter right now, you can click Next. And now you have to enter the name of the microscope you'll be using, or you might have multiple microscopes in your lab. But in our lab we found it useful to give different names to the microscopes as like a short identifier for on which microscope each experiment is done. So we have one microscope called Cyclops, but you might have another microscope like Microscope 2. And as soon as you've entered all the microscopes you want to enter, you can click Finish, and we've now successfully initialized the GoFigure database. Before we can start doing segmentations and saving these results into the database, we'll need a file that's in the proper format for GoFigure to use. GoFigure can open LSM files, but in order to use them files with the database, you'll have to first export LSM files to megacapture. And that can be done by clicking File and then Export LSM to megacapture. So here I'll browse for this LSM file we're looking at right now. And then I will pick a path to export these files into. And you should be careful here because a megacapture file is actually a list of files. So for each different experiment you'll want to give a different path here because you won't want to get these PNG or TIFF files confused from experiment to experiment. So here I've already created a unique folder that I'm going to save these files into. And I'll save these as PNG files, and I can hit Convert. And you can see that quickly the conversion is done. And I'll show you where those files ended up. Here you can see that this is a folder containing multiple PNG images, which correspond to different slices of that 3D image. And there's also this text file, which is a .meg file that stands for megacapture. And this file just contains metadata about the experiment and pointers to these image files. So now we have the file in a format that's usable by both GoFigure and GoFigure's database feature, and we are ready to import the files into the database. And to do that, you can go to File, Use Database. You could have also just clicked on this icon up here at the left. This server name field will automatically be filled in as localhost, and you can keep that as it is. That's good. For user, you should change it to whatever you entered as your username earlier in this tutorial. So I used username, if you recall. And then I hit enter to go to next. And now I will give a name to this project that we'll be creating in the database. And so when choosing a name of a project here, you should pick some kind of broad descriptor that might describe a couple years worth of work. So if you have a project studying the ear, you could name this project ear. And you can choose your author name here, and a description could just be something like ear project, although you'd probably use something a bit more descriptive. And now you can name this particular imaging session, which corresponds to this image file that you're going to import. So this is for a particular experiment. What's a proper name? So if today was January 1st, 2099, you might enter 2099-01-01 ear 48 hours post-fertilization, or something like that. Just anything that describes this particular experiment. I'll leave this description field blank for now. You can choose what microscope you were using to acquire these images. Let's say we were using Cyclops here. And then now we're prompted to select the file that from the image set that's forever going to be associated with this database entry. So at this point you want to make sure that you have this megacapture file format file saved in a folder that you're happy keeping it in, because it'll be a pain or perhaps impossible to change that. And so I will navigate to one of those files we created before in the conversion to megacapture folder, and you can just pick any one of these files and hit open, and then you're ready to click finish and import the data set. So now this image set is imported into the database, and we're ready to begin doing segmentations or what have you on this data set. And you can see here that here is the LSM file, which was originally associated with this data set, and here is this experiment name that we gave for this project, and this is where we'll be doing segmentations. And now you're ready to save the work you do using GoFigure, and we'll discuss how to use some of these main features like manual segmentation in the next tutorial. Thanks, and enjoy using GoFigure.